All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday, November 13th. Hey, Russ. Hey, Omer, Lorna. Good morning, good morning. All right, guys, markets are digesting the CPI report. NQ tiny little pop. We have the RUT up about 1%. We have gold futures, little pop. Bitcoin is flat. Not too much action. Think back to last week. Really big push. Look at things like Bitcoin, Amazon, Tesla. Really big breakouts. I think the price action since last Thursday, Friday, in the grand scheme of things, it's all pretty normal. A lot of things break out, a lot of things make their big move, and then everything, including the S&Ps and the Qs, pretty much just takes a chill pill. I think normal, I think healthy, and the beauty of that is, from that chill pill, a lot of times you end up getting, in this case now we have a 4-hour, 2-hour, 1-hour squeeze. So everything's taken a breather long enough to reset back at support, build up a brand new squeeze. And I think between now and Friday, before you're looking at more Tesla, Apple, Google, etc., now we got a 30-minute squeeze. Make this your overall focus. If your watch list is NVIDIA, Meta, and Microsoft, and then today, tomorrow, maybe later in the week, QQQ fires the 30-minute squeeze long. They fire the 1-hour squeeze long, the 2-hour, the 4-hour. In most cases, it's a great thing for your NVIDIA, etc., etc. They all begin the fire short. Market could be in for a bit more of a flush. So make that your major focus. And then S&P futures. They have gifted us with a 4-hour squeeze, a 1-hour squeeze, and a 2-hour squeeze to go along with that. They all fire to the upside. Good for most things out there. They all fire short. Could be room for a further flush. But yeah, I think, make that your major focus. What I'm lacking right now, take the 4-hour chart, for example. Trend is pretty strong. Structure is pretty good. As far as a good entry, I've got it right where I want it. We're lacking momentum. So back here, when momentum turned back above zero, then you got the push. I would argue right now you have better trend, you have better structure. We got to get that momentum turn. If you look at the 1-hour on the S&Ps, the ES rather, we don't have a trend issue. We don't have a structure issue. What we do have is a pretty big divergence. There we go. Meaning momentum on the hourly, that peaks back here last Wednesday. Momentum begins to fade, eventually hangs out below zero. Meanwhile, price does what? Keep on pushing, keep on pushing, keep on pushing. At some point, that divergence can catch up to the market. So if you're bullish, best case scenario, today, tomorrow, they take momentum, reload it back above zero. Then I think you got the green light to look for a push. If they can't turn momentum, well, be a little careful there. So there's the indexes, and then get working through a few of the names here. I think you've got two sides of the fence right now. In one camp you have things like, Bitcoin, Amazon, Tesla, etc. They had bigger time frame squeezes. They've all made a push. They've all broken out. Those are kinds of things where, we do want to look for continuation higher, but it's also a matter of picking your spots wisely. Maybe wait for a flush, maybe waiting for 30-minute hourly squeeze. And then in the other camp, you have things like Meta, Apple, a few more. Broadcom's a good one. They're still in their 3-day, weekly, 2-day squeezes. They haven't fired yet. So two sides of the fence. One name that did break out, of course, Amazon here. And I think in the short term, you're watching two levels. You're watching two levels. with really a focus on one setup. I think the setup being the weekly squeeze begins all the way back in June. All right, so June, July, August, September, October, November. It's a lot of energy getting built up. 23 weeks in, squeeze just fires. Momentum just crossed back above zero. The initial target is closer to 220, 225-ish. So there's your bigger picture setup. Shorter term, watch the 210 level and the 200 level. If you follow spot gamma, at least as of yesterday, I got to check this morning. The call ball sits there at 210. Look at that like a magnet. If we are below that 210 call wall, they might want to take it directly into it. When we get there, it can be a pretty big, a lot of times, at least initially, a decent level of resistance. On the first couple of shots, it might be a little tough to break it through. And then your put wall down there at 200, it's the opposite. If we do begin the flush, could be a big magnet for a downside target. Could also be a big level of support. Also lines up here with the previous highs. So, pretty much anywhere above 200. Trying to find a spot to build up a trade here. It could be a flush back to 205. It could be a flush all the way back to 200. If I cannot get the flush, I'm looking for something like 2 hour, 1 hour, 5-minute squeeze. Wherever I can get them, we'll take them. All right, gotta turn my extended hours off. There we go. That's more like it. That could be the entry. Maybe there's not a bigger flush down to 205-ish, 200. 1 hour squeeze, momentum turn. That could kick off the next push for you. 210 and 200 on Amazon. And then the nutcase known as Tesla. All right, back to 338 this morning. With a high flyer like Tesla, I think best case scenario at this point in time, you're jumping in here, you're playing with profits. Meaning maybe you're buying calls back here. You catch the easy part of this crazy push. Easy math, maybe you made $5,000. Now, the nature of these kinds of moves is there's going to be a crap load of people out there. They're buying calls. They've made $1,000. They've made $2,000. They've made $5, 10, 15, $20,000. It's very possible on a day like yesterday, where, mind you, what did Tesla do yesterday? You're looking at it on paper. Ooh, that's ugly. It just pulled back to an hourly 21. Going to be a lot of folks out there, right? They'll make a lot of money on the way up. You got to think in terms of options pricing. Right? On a crazy ass move like that, your 340 calls, 350, 380, 400, they're getting all kinds of jacked up. It doesn't take some, devastating collapse in Tesla to kill those calls. A little bit of back and forth chop, a little pullback to hourly support can quickly cut them in half. So point being, ideally on a name like Tesla, you've made some cash on the initial move, right? And maybe you made, call it $5,000. Keep throwing $500 at it, throw $1,000 at it, keep playing with your profits. You put $5,000 in your pocket, maybe you throw $1,000 at it. Tomorrow morning, Tesla gaps down to $200 per share. Well, that $1,000 is gone, but between those two trades, you've guaranteed a net profit. You don't want to make a bunch on the way up and then give it all back. But the further these things go, the crazier they get, the easier that is. So as far as Tesla, what I would want to anchor to from here, the next 15-minute squeeze, the next 30-minute, 1 hour squeeze, it would all feel familiar to a fella like me. So there's Tesla. Next up is NVIDIA. All right, so I really like the weekly squeeze. It just fired about 2 bars ago. I think in time that can get Nvidia into a buck 60, maybe a bit higher. The question for this week into next week is, before earnings on the 20th, can they get through that big 150? Could be a case where they break it through 150. In one more final push, one more final burst before next week's earnings. Could also be a case where maybe they don't quite break it out. Little more choppy under 150, get through the announcement, then look for the next big move. As we're trying to figure all that out, right now we have a 2 hour, 1 hour, 15-minute, 5-minute squeeze. So trying to call for direction between now and Friday, early next week, I think the squeezes makes that job a lot easier. The 5-minute squeeze fires long, then the 15, then the hourly. That might be a spot for a push through 150. They all fire short, of course. No soup for Nvidia. Not a name I'm in a big rush to buy for a big trade, but I certainly will be after earnings. All right, Nvidia, Tesla, Amazon. Let's jump over here to the Bitcoin. As soon as TOS can unfreeze. Hang tight, guys. This could take a while here. It could take anywhere from 1 to 3 business days for Schwab. There we go. No, not yet. Okay, we are back at it. All right, so Bitcoin. The coin of the bit. Not something I've really ever focused on. And truthfully, I never really traded it much until really up until last week. I'm not a crypto guy. I don't know anything about crypto. What I know a little bit about is a good-looking weekly squeeze. And this one checks pretty much every box. June, July, September, October, all the way into November. The weekly chart just goes through this massive consolidation. All right. Now, the move into that squeeze was pretty bullish. Weekly squeeze, build up the energy, squeeze fires, kicks off a nice leg to the upside. Then they got to catch their breath. But notice all throughout that squeeze, even though momentum is below zero, the bears don't do anything. And for the most part, that's their best chance. If the bears can break momentum, then they can try to break structure. The fact they didn't, and now momentum turns positive, usually pretty bullish. So that squeeze just fired. On that momentum shift, it just got a fresh tank of gas. Food for thought, you're about 15+% above, what I think bigger picture is the key level there. On any pullback, any flush, if they can keep it above that box, right, back down to 80,000, maybe all the way back down to, 75,000. After firing that squeeze, if they can keep it out of that range, I think from here you look for trend higher. Right? Definition of trend is higher highs and higher lows. Not, hey, we're going up 10% every day. That being said, I'm here for a push into 100,000. So a couple different ways you can play this. So far I've done a little bit of both. I've held a few trades overnight. I've day traded it. I'm long at the moment. One approach is maybe you buy some all the way up here. But if you're buying them all the way up here, and you can look at MBT, the micro Bitcoin futures. You're buying the bad boy all the way up here. I think you are fully comfortable and fully willing to buy more on a pullback, potentially all the way back down to the breakout level. The other alternative is, you want to be a bit more slicey and dicey. Go look for a 1-hour squeeze, go look for a 30-minute, 15-minute. Wait for a buy trigger, jump in. At that point, you can keep a much tighter leash around its neck. But I'm long Bitcoin right now, and over time looking for a push into 95 to 100,000. And again, that has nothing to do with thoughts on crypto or Bitcoin itself. Tis just a weekly squeeze. All right, so there's a few things that have made a nice move so far. Bigger picture, just having fired weekly squeezes usually points towards room for more upside. Shorter term, keep in mind, none of that has to happen in a straight line. It's always cooler when it does, but it doesn't have to be that way. Then you flip over to a few things like Meta, for example. Sitting here in a 2-day squeeze, sitting here in a daily squeeze, 1 hour, 30-minute squeeze, building up the energy at the buy zone. Amazon, Bitcoin, etc., they've already released a lot of energy. That can keep them going, but short term, they've already made the easy part of the initial move. Meta, Apple, Broadcom, they haven't done that yet. So for Meta here, I like this 2-day squeeze. We have an out the money call debit spread for December expiration. It's all about that 600. Right now, this reminds me a little bit of Netflix going back a few months ago, where Netflix had a call wall at 700. And they tried to get through one time, they tried twice, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50 times. They finally got through. Really nice move unfolds. So that's your level to break, and yeah, I like it. I like it. Now, one that I can't suggest you buy right now if you're looking for what I would call fast money would be Apple. And I'm long Apple right now. I have a 240 call for January expiration. Could be, a few weeks down the road. Could be a few months down the road. When this weekly squeeze fires, I think it's either a path into 250 or a path down to 200 or maybe lower. Trying to call for either or right now. With conviction and more importantly, conviction the move happens anytime soon. I think it's super, super tough when everything's neutral. So those are our labels for the buy and the sell signals. If we had that big weekly 3-day, 2-day squeeze, and then every time frame from a 5-minute all the way up to a weekly, they all had an active buy signal. Now I think you got the best of both worlds. A lot of energy getting built up, and then most things pointing towards it should be a move to the upside. If you're bearish, you want the opposite. Bunch of squeezes and a bunch of sell signals. The neutral nature of it, I think, makes it tough to call direction on until you get a weekly close below 220 or a weekly close back above 230. I really think anything in between is just a lot of glorified chop. So I got the 240 for January. Where I would add to that trade, back up near that 230. Give me a couple of closes back above the daily 21. That's the spot where I jump in. Probably buy. Well, I'll figure out how many more I buy if we get there. And I think that's the bulk of what I got for you, folks. Tesla, Meta, Apple. Quick look here at the Broadcom weekly. Just don't forget, for most of these ideas, Tesla, NVIDIA, etc., they may not work until the market makes its next big move. So if you try to visualize things, whether it is today, tomorrow, next week, and right now these are all ifs, if-then statements. But today, tomorrow, next week, if the S&P futures fire their 1 hour squeeze long, fire their 2 hour squeeze long, fire their 4 hour squeeze long, probabilities wise, then you go look at the NVIDIAs, then you go look at the etceteras. They should have some good wind at their back. Right? If you can combine that with a good setup, should be in good shape. Today, tomorrow, all of next week, S&P's QQQ, they just keep on trading sideways in a big squeeze. A little tough to get a big breakout, and maybe a little tough to get a big flush. They all fire short. I would expect pressure in Nvidia, Tesla, etc. So as always, make the indexes your major focus. And yeah, shall not be a dull remainder of the week. But any questions, anything y'all want to take a look at? Got another 10 or so minutes to hang out here. So drop it in the chat and I'll see what you got. I don't know if you all heard the rumor yesterday. The rumor is if Bitcoin breaks 91,000, Mirza buys everybody lunch. I can't confirm or deny the rumor, but that is what I'm hearing on the streets of Simpler this morning. All right, good morning there, Cindy. Coinbase. Going back to the Bitcoin discussion, one way to play that is just buy the Bitcoin futures. You could do the micros, MBT. Another way to do that is through, you can look at your Coinbases, you can look at your MSTRs. Thinking being they keep on taking Bitcoin higher. If this goes from 90K all the way into 100K, should benefit MSTR, should benefit Coinbase, giving them a little more oomph. One thing I would mention about coin, MSTR, etc. Be a little bit mindful about how you're trading it. I think there's ways where you could buy coin, it can go higher. And depending on your strike selection, time till expiration, you might not get paid much or you might not get paid at all. What I mean by that is if we go to the look at the implied volatility, 145%, 118, 100%. My preference most times when you're working with that kind of IV, I'd be looking at a put credit spread. I'd be looking at an out the money call butterfly. Something where at some point I can benefit from the premium decay. And then as far as how to trade it, chart wise, for a lot of these runaway trains, I think you make a big part of the focus, the lower time frame squeezes. And here's a benefit. The benefit's kind of twofold. Especially on a name like a coin with jacked up premium. The benefit of finding a 15-minute squeeze, 30-minute squeeze hourly. For one, imagine we have an hourly squeeze here on coin. We're pretty far above the daily 21 EMA, but I can jump in on the hourly, and maybe I'm putting my exit below the hourly 21. I don't have to take on all that big risk. That I think is beneficial. Options wise, if things can chill out long enough to go into a 15-minute squeeze, go into a 30-minute hourly, options premiums cool down a little bit. That 350 call you want to buy on the pump, that might be going for, conversation's sake, it's going for $10. If it just chills out long enough to give you a 30-minute hourly squeeze, it might be going for about $4 or $5. They'll cut it in half for you just on the breather. So different ways to play the Bitcoin idea. Bitcoin futures, a few of the ETFs, BITO, GBTC. There's some leverage ETFs. Then there was the coin and the MSTR. And if Bitcoin keeps pushing, I think they should do pretty good here in the short term. JM, you heard the same rumor? All right. JM has confirmed the rumor. AJ, do I see a re-entry in Netflix? Man, Netflix has been a beast. Now I gotta look just for torture. I day traded the 800 calls last week. They were the 800s for this week. I forget what I bought them and sold them for, but $22 per contract sounds nice. Anyway, for a re-entry in Netflix, so bigger picture, I think we at least want to recognize the fact that the weekly squeeze, for the most part, has gotten the job done and worked as advertised. Builds up the energy near our 21 EMA, releases the energy, squeeze fires. A well-behaved squeeze that takes you into that 3 ATR. All right, so that is your easy part of the move. And my goal as a trader is, in terms of my sizing, as far as my aggressiveness, that's where I'm trying to be aggressive. That's where I'm trying to work more size. When we hit the target, from there, ideally, I'm playing with profits and I'm looking for a cherry on top. Number one goal, if I made any money from 700 into 800 and change, I have to protect the bulk of that. Depending how aggressive I want to be, I can go and risk half of my closed profits. I can risk 25%. But for the Teslas, Amazons, Netflixes, got to make sure if we keep on pushing the envelope, we're doing that in a fashion where if it all goes to zero tomorrow, we're not giving back all the progress. My favorite thing to do in that moment in time is just, sit back, relax, wait for my next 15-minute, 30-minute hourly squeeze. That gives me edge. That gives me something to work with. To answer your question, that'd be my re-entry. Could even be a 5-minute, but I got that moment in time where things have pulled back to a support level. They're catching their breath. They're building up energy. Then I can look at all my directional indicators. How's momentum? How is structure? But that moment in time would give me something to work with. Hey, Sarah, PE is up 53%. Is it still a good time to get in? Pepe, huh? For some reason, Sarah, my chart won't pull up PE. Could it be a different ticker? However, I can answer your question without even looking at the chart. Sarah's question is, it's up 53%. Oh, okay, it's a crypto coin. Okay. All right, that might be why I'm not getting it on toss. I'll answer that the same way I answered the same question when I bought more Bitcoin futures yesterday. Whether or not it's a good entry, I think a big part of that comes down to how much room am I willing to give it. And then do I have a setup that justifies the idea of looking for further upside? So for me on the BTC, my setup is the weekly squeeze. But from there, if I'm buying more today, and I'm really thinking, okay, I want to swing trade this, it's only a good entry if I'm comfortable sitting through a pullback all the way back down to that breakout level. Let's all pretend this is a 5-minute time frame. If that's a 5-minute chart, that wouldn't be the craziest move. Consolidate for a few hours, break it out, at some point come back, give it a back test, then maybe keep trending higher. If you're not comfortable with that kind of risk, sitting through a pullback down to 80K or lower, I don't think it'd be a good entry all the way up here. Then you want to find a spot to take it off a little quicker. So without being able to see Pepe, it's the same advice I would offer there. Better way to look at it, Sarah, where are you wrong? On the Bitcoin futures for a move into 100,000, in the short term, I'm wrong if we're back in the box. I've marked up my level. I've got my line in the sand. Now that makes my job of figuring out, hey, is this a good entry? So much easier. If I can buy more contracts, right above my key level, that's an amazing entry. I'm not taking on too much risk. If I'm buying more contracts all the way up here at 95,000, it's a long way down. All right, jumping over here to the YouTubes. Good morning, folks. How are we? Good morning, Grace. Good morning, Thomas. Hey, good morning, Glenn. Good question. So, the squeeze labels, I updated them. I updated them going back to last week. The team is going to work on the update. I got to send it over to Eric, have him do everything for TradingView, and then I'll send them back out. Now, me personally, I'm not going to put them on my chart. Right? And you're talking about the labels for trend, structure, momentum, etc. I might put them on a separate chart, but for me, what I'm really trying to work towards is really less is more. I'm only watching about 10 stocks. I'm only looking for one setup. Thinking back to the most recent update, or a couple of updates ago, the benefit of the white dot, white arrow, and then really that label up here, that captures everything. So if that label up there is green, I'm checking off every box, man. I've got good structure, I've got trend, I've got momentum, I've got a squeeze, I've got a buy signal, I've got a perfect score, I got price above the trailing stop, the long laundry list. But a few folks in the room did request those, so I gave them an update, and I shall keep you posted on that. Terry, what's up, my man? Always good to see you. Ken, when is my next seminar? Nothing on the schedule seminar wise, like an official webinar. Let me check my schedule. I know sometime soon we're gonna do a live session for walking through all the recent updates to the indicators. If you hang tight, I can find out the date for that. But I'll definitely give you a heads up as we get closer. Jerry. So it looks like Tuesday, December 10th. But again, as we get closer, I shall keep y'all updated. And yeah, Ivan, I have taken a few names off my moneymakers watch list. One that I took off was AMD. One that I took off was AMAT. I did take off a few more. I'm trying to think. Again, for me, less is more. So, step one is kind of sitting down, looking at all your trade results, year after year after year, trying to build up a group of, the universal 80-20 rule. What I found for myself was every single year I make money on, I make 80% of my money on 20% of the things I trade. It's never healthcare, never industrials, never energy, XLP. It's always big tech, big semis, QQQ, S&Ps. So that realization was, pretty much just step number one to say, all right, well, maybe I should stop watching Procter and Gamble's, in general, electrics and Caterpillars, and focus on the spots where I've proven to make money. Then step two was taking that focus, narrowing it down even more. How many times throughout the year do I trade AMAT? In a 10-year window, maybe 10 times. All right, well, that ain't adding to my bottom line too much. The good news is I have good scans. We all got good scans. So anything anything not in my top 10, like an AMD, like a Goldman Sachs, things I could look to play ball with, the scans will catch them. But all right, folks, I've got to let you go here. Got to go jump into my room for the open. As always, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And again, major focus, I think, between now and the weekend. S&Ps, QQQ, lower time frame squeezes. They all fire long. Should be good for your watch list stocks. They all fire short. Could be a little pressure if they do nothing but just keep on squeezing. Could be a good couple of days to walk your dog. But thanks again, and we'll talk soon. Adios, guys.